welcome to the International Mentoring Community, all things mentoring lounge, where we have dialogues, multi-logs, discussions, debates, conversations about anything to do with mentoring, mentor, mentee, and mentorship. And today we're going to be taking a look at continuous learning and improvement as it links to mentoring and having a bit of fun with that. And I'm Stephen Hobbs, and Doug Lawrence is with me. We're with the International Mentoring Community, and we've been doing this for a little while now, and we hope to be doing it for a lot longer. So we'll see how it unfolds. And just again, as a reminder, today is about continuous learning and improvement. And we're just going to take a look at it from a bit of an overview perspective, then look at a few action outcome statements that are aligned with that, because it's something for the mentor to be thinking about, and I'm going to say feeling, excuse me. Wow, that cough came from somewhere. Take a little drink there. Feeling about it as well. So we have to see where we're going. So with that, I think, Doug, why don't we just introduce ourselves, and that would be helpful.
Okay, my name is Doug Lawrence, and I'm one of the co-founders of the International Mentoring Community. I also have my own business, Talent C, which is focused on all things mentoring. And with the International Mentoring Community, I am the director of practice and outreach.
Great. And Stephen Hobbs here. I have my own company as well, Wealth Movement, WELLTH. And I serve in the capacity as Director of Education Certification. Now, as I always like to share, Doug is the deep practitioner, and he does that in a lot of areas, business, but especially in mental health. I tend to play a little bit more over in the environmental movement with nature-informed programming. So I do it over there, but I tend to do a little bit more of the writing behind the scenes, doing those kind of things. Doug, you just published a book. How's that going these days?
It's actually, there's a lot of interest in the aspect, because the book, it was written with the idea in mind of demonstrating how mentoring can be part of the mental health support structure. And the feedback that I'm getting from those that have purchased the book or have been given a copy of the book has been very, very positive, in that, they've indicated that this needed to be done a lot sooner than what it was, and that I've actually captured the essence of what the situation is and what a solution would, what a solution could be. So it's been going actually quite well.
Well, that's great. Yeah. I've got one that's going to be coming out here fairly quickly called Mentoring Now, the mentor within, mentoring without. And it will be directed more to those who are, well, I have some awareness of mentoring, but what's it all about? To those who have stepped in already and looking at, well, hang on a minute, I think it might be time to just take a look at it from a different point of view. Let me read a book. Let's get involved with the International Mentoring Community, which is a great segue into why we're talking about continuous learning and improvement in mentoring today. And that's why I just wanted to bring it out, that grab Doug's book. It's on Amazon. Just look up Doug Lawrence, and the title again is, Doug?
You Are Not Alone.
Okay, and mine will be Mentoring Now. That'll be out within probably about the month. See how that goes. So I think it would be helpful, Doug, if we do what we usually do, and that's just to go over the definition of mentoring, and then I'll just ask if there's anything in particular you want to emphasize today in terms of the presentation. And I'm just going to make some linkages with something called continuous learning, continuous improvement to that definition. So over to you.
All right. So mentoring is a two-way trusted relationship where the mentor and mentee learn and grow together through personal and professional development.
and linkages or anything you want to highlight today?
Well, especially in light of the topic for today, the aspect of the mentor and the mentee learning and growing together. So continuous, learning, continuous improvement on a personal and professional basis, or, through personal and professional development. So the definition is really, really focused on, kind of hitting what we're talking about today, kind of hitting it out of the park. So.
Yeah. And for both the mentor and the mentee, sometimes we forget about it because we'll come into this going, oh, this is for the mentor. No, the mentee can learn a lot of this, because what might happen is the mentee may become a mentor. And I believe that it's true as well, from like the sense of a ripple effect. If you're coming at this from a mentoring for the workplace program, it's really important to keep taking a look at this definition of mentoring as it applies within your organization as well. And that could be charitable, government, business, any of the different types of organizations as well. So the continuous learning, continuous improvement, I just wanted to bring out here is continuous learning is often about the learning of the concepts that are important to the mentoring, to the process of mentoring. The continuous improvement is really looking at the practices. So the notion of the concepts of knowledge, the practices of skill, and then how does the attitude bounce back and forth between the two of those. That is not like, I'm not trying to come across as that is a pure way of looking at it. It's just a helpful way, because a lot of times when you situate and learn, all right, it's that notion of getting at the concepts. When you get into the action outcomes, which is to really go into the action aspect to get the outcomes that you're talking about, that's when you're doing the continuous improvement of the practices. But guess what? You've got to improve the ways in which you learn. And you've got to learn the different practices. So it's just a way to just remind us is that they're sort of chasing themselves, but it is a summary way of looking at what we want to get into today. I also just wanted to make mention is that from a learning point of view, there's all different kinds of ways of learning. I believe that two that we use a lot in the international mentoring community is situational learning. There is the informal, formal, but there is the situational, incidental. Is that often the best way to learn about mentoring is to mentor, right? And that's where I believe the international mentoring community is really a great place, because from a certification point of view, it's a guiding you along, and you could get a journey mentor to join you that takes you along this notion of getting the concepts, putting into practice. From the practice, what did I learn to be able to improve those concepts to get for the practice, and back and forth, back and forth. But there's also this sense that, this improvement aspect really has to be there for you. And when I'm sharing this is there's two other words that I would share with improvement, or I'm going to break it down into improve. The other two words are focus and strengthen. So when we do this continuous improvement, continuous focus, continuous strengthen, if I was to extend that wording there, to improve is really to get into the sense of finding that worth. Is this worth to continue? So if from a continuous improvement point of view, if I'm learning this concept or I'm undertaking this practice, you're going to be asking yourself, is this worth continuing? Right? Or do I have to do some kind of alteration to this? Or in some cases, it might be, hey, listen, this is gone. This is not going to be in my vocabulary anymore. The focus aspect, the continuous focus, is to keep finding the truth of what it is that you're doing. All right. So in a sense, you're proving the truth of this. Yes, this is truth. I'm going to trust this. And from a transparency point of view, that's where I'm actually going to keep doing the truth in a sense. The third way of looking at it is from a strength point of view. It's to develop the utility. You're just going to get stronger. It's sort of like building up the muscles. If you're in doing your weight training, it's to strengthen up your practice, strengthen up your concepts. I think, Doug, you would agree is that you've done certification a couple times now, and each time, because of the certification, you have improved, focused, and strengthened. You found the worth, truth, and utility of what's going on, have you not?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, and it's shifted how you go about doing your mentoring, right? Using a certification approach as a way in which to do this learning and improvement. Do you want to is there anything in particular you want to share about that experience?
For me, because I have the practice of mentoring, what I found was each time that I went and either certified or recertified, it forced me to do a lot of reflection, number one, which was important, and it forced me to look at all the different situations, scenarios, whatever term you want to use, that I had experienced in, and being able to take those then and apply those against the action outcome statements to be able to say, this is, this has helped me better understand sort of what some of the potential outcomes could be if I do a certain action. And so it was, for me, it's, even though it's every 2 years, it still is a meaningful journey every 2 years that's part of the research. But for me, that's time well spent in going down that path, because that has helped expand my personal learning and expand my personal knowledge base and expand my lived experience.
And along the way is because you're also entering into your mentoring logbook, that reflection to be able to continue to learn, to continue to improve is there as well. Highlighting the certification, recertification, that's certainly there, but there is that after every mentoring interaction, you are in a smaller sense doing it, adding it up. So there's sort of that formative component to it, and then there's that summative component to it as well. Anything you want to add there?
No, I think that covers that off quite nicely.
Okay. So as we're going into this one with the action outcome statements, there is essentially 5 here. There's a couple of broad ones and 3 layered ones. And I wanted to just emphasize is that as you approach what we're going to share today, think about it from the perspective of learn, know, do. That's a simpler way of talking about what's here is learn about these action outcome statements, know what they're about, and then do them so that you can learn them, so you can know them, so you can do them. And sometimes you might do them to know them, to learn them, right? That kind of mix that you're moving along. So as we go into each one of them, just sort of have that in the back of your mind about, okay, how do they apply to me? And can I do these action outcome statements? That's really where we're going. And if the answer is no, there's some education. If the answer is yes, confirm it, keep doing it, log it, and continue to move forward. And I'm going to say this, and some people say, well, why do you say it? I say it is because you don't have to do certification. There's nowhere where it says you must do it. There are organizations now starting to go, I think, do you have some kind of certification or something like coaching, or even now they're talking about mentoring? But Doug and I would certainly encourage, if you are just getting started or you're just into it, is to really look at the certification route. To Doug's point of about 5 minutes ago, it's a great way to continue to learn, to continue to improve. Okay, so again, look at this through the lens of learn, know, do. So the 2 broad action outcomes are discuss the requirements for an inclusive and mutual learning environment, and discuss the merits of multiple educating approaches for the mentoring arrangement. So let's just take a look at each one of these. Um, the broadness here is because you're discussing them, because they're sort of broad concepts, and you want to be able to sort of look at it from different angles. The layered ones start to get more into the practice component of it. So when we talk about discuss the requirements of an inclusive and mutual learning, it goes back to the two-way component that's in the definition. It's a two-way trusted relationship. Therefore, it's a two-way learning, right? And knowing and doing. It's about improvement, focus, and strengthen. And that's what you're going to be doing as it unfolds. And it's inclusive, is that you're allowing to bring in many diverse ways of looking at things. It's allowing you to open up to be in contact with all different kinds of people that are out there. If there's anything from a mentoring point of view that I've learned over the years, the sense of the diverse ideas, the diverse people I've interacted with, oh gosh, I've had so much fun, done so much learning. I've done it around the world. I've done it when I've been working in different parts of the world. I've had people have conversations with me, and I'm getting up at like 2:00 in the morning to have a mentoring conversation with someone, right? So this notion of it's being inclusive, it's mutual, that's really important. And to be able to discuss that from various angles, all right, is really helpful. And I would stress is maybe seek out those kind of situations, right? Situation to learn, go find them and see what happens. Now, Doug, you've had lots of this because you've been speaking with people all over the world, a lot more than I do. Again, Doug has a deeper practice. Anything in particular you want to add to that inclusive and mutual learning environment?
Where I see, like I do a large number of podcasts where I talk about mentoring and mental health. And what I've found is that if you're open enough to be able to see when learning opportunities are being presented to you, that you can actually enhance your ability to learn and grow as a mentor. And what's interesting is, using the podcast as an example, is that while I'm walking away from their deeper, richer, more, I've been able to share lived experience and gain some additional lived experience, so has the people that I've talked with in the podcast. So, even to the extent of them, saying, that's been really, we need to get you back on the show to further talk about, some other aspects. So I think, when you look at it, if we as mentors and even mentees for that matter can be open enough, the learning environment is so there's so much of it out there for us to be able to embrace, learn, and grow, that you just need to be mindful of those opportunities.
Yeah, and so from a learning point of view, the other one of this broad is the merits of multiple educating approaches. So if you take a coin, you got one side is learning, the other side is educating. Take the two ends of a stick, kind of idea. And we bring this up is because, and let me use the notion of how to fasten things together. Hammer, nails, screwdriver and screw, wrench and nut and bolt. There are different ways in which to do the fastening. But therefore, from an educating point of view, is that when you go in to do your mentoring, make sure when you mentor. But guess what? There might be the opportunity or the requirement that you use another educating approach, but be really clear that when you use it, is it appropriate for what's going on? Now, I draw particular attention here to mentoring and counseling, and Doug can speak more to this, but there is a very distinctive line there versus if you're mentoring and all of a sudden you end up doing a bit of coaching, the line is a little bit more dotted, where counseling has a bit more of it's a straight line. You know it's there. Do you want to speak to that at all, Doug? Because you've had to deal with that a couple of times.
Yeah, the big thing that I have found is that as a mentor working in that space, that as you've laid out, there is that line and it's not dotted, it's solid. And what I've found is that I was working with an individual who called me up and said, I think I need help. And so we had a conversation, and I basically, my response was, I am so sorry, but I don't think I'm the right person. I don't think I can help you. And I was able to provide some guidance at the very minimal to be able to say, do you have access to, through your organization, do you have access to mental health professionals? And you get the usual pushback where people say, well, I'm not crazy. I don't need, mental health help. And in those situations, you need to make sure you step back a bit further from the conversation and basically come up with well, I agree. You're not, based on what you've told me, you know, you're the same person I talked to a month ago. I'm just concerned for your well-being. That's all. And coming at it from that perspective is a softer approach. And it's definitely, you're not counseling, you're not a psychologist, psychiatrist, you're not a social worker, you're none of those. But at the same time, what I also will always suggest is it's actually in your best interest to have a bench strength. So to be able to have those particular individuals that you can call up and say, I've got somebody that I'm working with in a mentoring capacity, and here's what I'm hearing. Is this a place you can help?
Yeah. Well, another example is that when I've done some mentoring for the workplace, there have been times where someone I'm interacting with, I know could benefit from some training. In other words, they're missing a skill, and it could be anything from you're not quite listening correctly here, or you're not sharing in a way that I'm understanding, or there might be an ethical issue that you've raised. But one of the things that I've learned as a mentor is that I don't slip into the training. I don't help them get the immediate skill that they need right now. I may broadly just bring it forward and say, this might be something to explore at this point in time, even though I've done lots and lots of training on a lot of different elements. When I'm mentoring, I don't go into training. But I will go into something like facilitating, where I'm going to draw ideas from the person, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time there, because what I want to do is get that person to start thinking about, well, what is it that I believe? And let me bring that to the conversation so that when I mentor, not that when I mentor, I'm going to facilitate, then I'm going to mentor. I don't want to be doing that all the time. That looping, I would rather go, I'm going to facilitate, I'm going to mentor, but at this point in time, I need to do a little facilitating, draw some ideas from you. And this is how I would share. This is how I would bring it forth. And then I'm saying, okay, let's get back into the mentoring component. So that's what I mean about discussing the merits, all right, of these educating approaches, and really being clear about that. And I've written a book, and there's another, I'm going to be revising the book. It's actually going to be moving from 9 educating approaches to 12 educating approaches. Over the years, I've figured out a few more that I think need to be brought forward, all right, to take a look at that. And we'll certainly make an announcement about that at some point in time. Anything you want to add about what I've just shared there, Doug, or should we move on?
No, we can move on.
Okay, so the next 3 that we're going to take a look at are what I call, this is me personally, it's not from an IMC point of view, it's more they're coming from, these are layered out and they interact with each other. That's sort of a way I explain when I'm interacting with my mentees, is there's some broad things you need to understand, then there's these layers, they interact with each other, and you have to pay attention to them. They're not necessarily step by step by step by step. You might take one and then another one might come and play, and then you got to chase it around and just sort of have sort of like fun in your backyard with the dog, so to speak, right? It's running all over the place and you're throwing the ball and everything. That's sort of like an image I'd like to leave with you at this point in time. So the first one I want to do is just review the requirements for a mentoring arrangement conducive to learning and development. Now, you might go, haven't we talked about that before? Yes and no, okay? The two-way, notion of learning and growing, right, which is in the definition, right, that kind of idea. But what this is coming from a mentor's lens, and then helping the mentee, is to make sure that the arrangement you set up does allow for the fostering and fashioning of learning and development. I've had conversations with mentors and they go, well, they don't seem to be learning, so I think I'm just going to give up on this. And then I say, well, talk to me about how you're setting up the place, but also how are you setting up the space of mentoring for the learning and development. And what I'm referring to here is the place, which is more the tangibles, okay, where are you, right? The space are more of the intangibles, like what's the feeling that's there? How are you sitting and engaging with them? Are you sitting sideways to them? Do you have your arms folded across, right? There is the place of it, but there's also the space that you're holding for them. So you want to continually review what's required as you interact with your mentee. That's what I wanted to bring up there. Doug?
No, I have nothing to add to that.
Okay. So the next two I've sort of touched on, Doug has sort of touched on, but let's just take a look at them in a little bit more light, okay? The first one is use instructive coaching in the mentoring arrangement, and the other one is use facilitative mentoring in the mentoring arrangement. And you might go, well, haven't we talked about those? Yes, but I think there's something else to add here. You'll notice is that we're bringing instructive coaching and facilitative mentoring, those sort of pairings, right? And that they're there for you. So for me, I consider myself very much a facilitative mentor. I use mentoring and then I'm drawing ideas from someone. And it's not very often that I'll go to an instructive coach about getting the performance and asking the questions, and then instructing them if there's a little bit of holes and helping them understand why that they're learning. I'm not a great instructive coach. I've learned that. I am a wellsome, tremendous facilitative mentor. I get it. I appreciate it. I can be there. I can be present in it. I'm inspired. I'm enthused in doing it. But there's sometimes when you are mentoring, you may have to go to the coaching. You may have to go to the instructing. And we don't want to lose that. That's why we want to have you practice it just so that you know it, you understand it, you appreciate it, you know how it might unfold in front of you, to be able to say, guess what, I agree with you, Stephen. I am more of a facilitative mentor than I'm an instructive coach. I get that now. I know that distinction, and that's important. So from a practice point of view, what would you like to add to that mix, Doug?
I definitely don't. I don't use instructive coaching. I shy away from that as for whatever the reasons. And when you talk about facilitative mentoring, I look at it from the aspect of the Socratic method of where I use the question and answer approach, and I use that in the majority of the conversations I have from a mentoring perspective is, the aspect of using question and answer to get to where we need to get to.
And that's that drawing out. That's where that sort of goes. Now, from a mentoring point of view, you are using the Socratic, but sometimes you may want to go a little deeper into facilitative techniques. All right. And there are some that I work with rather than just doing Socratic. I actually may have a technique that says, it might ask a question like, which is a deeper facilitating question, which is, what's hindering and helping you from doing what you're doing? And then getting into it, finding out what those hinders are, those weaknesses and vulnerables, and those what are helping, those strengths and potentials, and really getting into, because that's what's necessary for me to be able to help the person to be a mentee with my mentoring, right? But also it's to bring more awareness from them into the mentoring arrangement. And I'll use those tools and techniques as well. So that's sort of the 5 action outcomes linked to this continuous learning and improvement. So again, just to remind you, the notion of the learning is about sort of gaining an understanding, so that from the knowing, which is you sorting things out, so that from the doing, you're actually going into practice. All right. And that sort of short form learn, know, do is just there, all right, as a way to remember about the continuous learning, continuous improvement. Because when you're doing the doing, how are you going to improve it? What's the focus you're going to take? How are you going to strengthen this? That's what we're attempting to get to on today's call. Is there anything in general you wanted to bring to the attention before we go into close, Doug, at this point?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, as we always do, always and in all ways, because I bring us in, I asked Doug to take us out. But just before I ask Doug to give a bit of a summary component to it, and when I know he's done, then I'll just say take care and I'll close off the broadcast. I just want to remind you is that Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Mountain Time is when we do this broadcast, and we put it on our YouTube channels and the mental health community page on Facebook. And Doug certainly interacts with there. And then we also do it on a couple of YouTube channels. So you can certainly catch up to us that way. And again, please subscribe. It always helps. Comments are always appreciated. So Doug, it looks like we're on the heading on the way out. So again, I'll let you share your summary point. When I know you're done, I'll just say take care and we'll close off the broadcast. So over to you.
So the one thing that I have found, and it's sort of reinforced by what we talked about this morning, was that it's really it's a great approach to take to actually create a personal development plan to help in your continuous learning as a mentor. And by actually having the PDP in place, you actually kind of push yourself in that direction where, where you're starting, you can sort of see, here's the path I need to take and here's how I'm going to get there.
Wonderful. Take care, everyone.